Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu news analysis. Today is 16th July 2024, Tuesday, and today we have a few important articles for the discussion. These articles are collected from different newspapers and they are very important from the exam perspective. So one by one we'll try to discuss all important articles, but before discussing them, yesterday I have given one practice question, that is with respect to International Atomic Energy Agency. Remember, I have told you that these type of questions are important because there was such type of questions which were asked by UPSC in previous year questions. So the question is, consider the following statements regarding the International Atomic Energy Agency. So that is the question, and if you look at the first statement says that it was established as an autonomous organization under the United Nations statute, and second statement says that it inhibits the complete use of nuclear technologies and nuclear energy, and third statement, it reports to both United Nations General Assembly and United Nations Security Council. Now before answering this question, let's go to the explanation part, and from the explanation, after understanding this International Atomic Energy Agency, we will try to answer this question, right? So first, if you look at the International Atomic Agency, it is the world center of cooperation in the field of nuclear energy, right? So International Atomic Energy essentially focuses on cooperation between the member countries in the area of nuclear energy and nuclear technology cooperation. And in fact, so it was established initially as Atoms for Peace organization in 1957. So initially, International Atomic Energy was established as Atoms for Peace organization in 1957. And the other thing that you have to understand here, that it is an autonomous organization in 1957 through its own international treaty, and that treaty is known as International Atomic Energy Statute, right? So one thing that you have to understand, please go through this statement. Initially it was known as Atoms for Peace organization, and initially in 1957 when it was established, it was an autonomous organization. However, through its own international treaty, that treaty was International Atomic Energy Agency Treaty, so that particular statute, this organization was established. And in fact, it reports to both United Nations General Assembly and also the Security Council. This is the third statement in that particular question. So where the headquarters is located? Headquarters is located in Vienna, Austria. In fact, the International Atomic Energy Agency is known as, or it serves as, Intergovernmental Forum for Scientific Technical Cooperation for the Peaceful Use of Nuclear Technology and also Nuclear Power worldwide. Now, we all knew the consequences of nuclear weapons being made by non-state actors, some irresponsible states such as North Korea, Iran, Pakistan. So therefore, organizations like International Atomic Energy Agency essentially ensures that the nuclear energy or nuclear technology is used only for the peaceful purposes, right? What are the basic functions of International Atomic Energy Agency? The functions include, it actually works with all member states and multiple partners who allied with the International Atomic Agency across the world, so essentially to promote safe, secure and peaceful use of these nuclear technologies. Similarly, it seeks to promote the peaceful use of nuclear energy, and it also inhibits the use of nuclear technology and nuclear energy for any military purpose, including making of nuclear weapons. Now let's get back into the question. So if you look at the question, so first statement says that International Atomic Energy Agency was established as an autonomous organization. Yes, it is true. So when it was established in the year 1957, it was known as Atoms for Peace organization, but it was not established through a UN statute. Rather, it has its own statute. International Atomic Energy Agency statute. So that statute provided for the establishment of this particular organization. So therefore, first statement is clearly incorrect. Now, if you look into the second statement, it says that international atomic energy agencies inhibit the complete use of nuclear technologies and nuclear energy. So this is absolutely incorrect. It never inhibit the complete use of nuclear technology. Rather, it in fact promotes safe and peaceful use of nuclear energy, and it would also prevent nuclear technology being used for making nuclear weapons. So therefore, this statement is also clearly incorrect. And if you look into the third statement, it reports to both United Nations General Assembly and United Nations Security Council. Yes, this statement is absolutely correct. So the correct answer for this question is A. One only is the correct answer for this question. Now today also I have a very important practice question. The question is, which of the following is a measure that can be used by the government to combat inflation? So we all knew what is inflation, and at the same time we also knew the reasons for the inflation and what are the measures that need to be taken to control the inflation. And here you have to identify the measure that the government can take to control inflation. Right, so the options are A. Reduction in cash reserve ratio. B. Providing more subsidies on exports. Option C. Increasing rate of interest on savings and fixed deposits. Option D. Increasing the non-planned expenditure on defense and police. So please answer this question in the comment section, and the correct answer I'll be providing you in tomorrow's class. Now without any delay, let's start our discussion. And the first topic that we are going to discuss, this is very important topic. This is particularly with respect to the money bills. Right, so in polity, money bills plays a very in fact they have a very crucial role, because they have a special procedure to be passed in the parliament. And in fact, money bills as a route is increasingly used by the center in recent times to bypass the Rajya Sabha. Why? Because money bill has a different procedure where it can only be introduced in the Lok Sabha but not in Rajya Sabha. So since it can be only introduced in Lok Sabha, and the power to decide whether any bill is money bill or not is also given to the speaker. So since there is a lack of impartiality on the part of speaker in many of the instances, so what has been happening, the government has been even passing the normal bills as money bills to evade the scrutiny by the Rajya Sabha, or to bypass the scrutiny by the Rajya Sabha. And that's where this controversy has actually started, because Supreme Court ready to hear petitions against passing of normal laws as money bills. As I've already told you that with respect to money bills, Lok Sabha has more powers than the Rajya Sabha, and that is taken advantage by the government to pass normal bills as money bills to bypass the Rajya Sabha's scrutiny. So that is the problem here. Now when we talk about these money bills, so money bills essentially dealt with Article 110 of the Indian Constitution. Just remember, Article 110 deals with the money bills. So first we'll understand the context. The context is that a Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, on Monday agreed to hear the petitions which are challenging that the money bill route is taken by the government increasingly in recent past to pass a contentious amendments to the various laws. Okay, so a government has been using this money bill route to pass some contentious amendments in the parliament, and that is why opposition parties are even criticizing the government, because the government has been increasingly using this money bill route. So when we talk about this money bill, we'll understand all the details with respect to these money bills, how these money bills are passed and what matters these money bills actually deals with. We'll understand that. However, the money bill question was referred to in the case. That case was Roger Matthew versus South Indian Bank Limited. So Roger Matthew versus South Indian Bank Limited case specifically deals with this money bill question in the Indian Parliament. So however, the cardinal issue or the key issue with respect to the money bill, or whether any amendment that could be passed as a money bill. So because understand one thing here, that money bill can actually bypass the scrutiny by the Rajya Sabha, right? So if any bill, if it is a normal bill or ordinary bill, and a speaker decides that that particular bill is a money bill, so in that case, of course, it bypasses the scrutiny of the Rajya Sabha. So therefore, it of course violates Article 110 of the Indian Constitution, because Article 110 of the Indian Constitution deals with the money bills, and so there are certain certain matters. Or so if a money bill deals with all those matters, any bill deals with all these matters. For example, appropriation of money from the Consolidated Fund of India. So so if any bill deals with the appropriation of money from the Consolidated Fund of India, then that bill can be considered as a money bill. Otherwise, so any normal bill, a speaker designating that particular bill as a money bill to bypass Rajya Sabha, of course, is a violation of Article 110 of the Constitution, because the bill is not dealing with any of the matters which are enumerated in Article 110 of the Indian Constitution. That's why this route has been increasingly used by the government, and opposition parties are also criticizing the route that the government has been using to pass such bills. Now we will understand the provisions of the Constitution which deals with the money bills. Now money bill deemed to contain only provisions which are dealing with all or any of the matters under clauses A to clause G of the Article 110 and clause 1 of the Indian Constitution, because it essentially deals with the matters including appropriation of money from the Consolidated Fund of India and any matter which deals with the taxation. However, money bill is restricted only to the specific financial matters, and those financial matters are mentioned in Article 110 clause A to clause G, right? So there are certain matters. If any bill deals with those matters from clause A to clause B, only then that particular bill will be classified as a money bill. Otherwise, any other bill will not be classified as a money bill. However, recently what Centre has done, so amendments made from 2015 onwards in the Prevention of Money Laundering Act through using this money bills route, giving Enforcement Directorate blanket powers of arrest and raid. So that is the one of the key concern, because the amendments which are made to the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, so those amendments are being done through the money bill route, and it has been giving more and more powers to the Enforcement Directorate over arrest and raids. So therefore, it has been victimizing the opposition parties. And in fact, the government very often raiding and arresting the opposition political parties using the draconian provisions of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, and that is the concern here. Right, so we will understand in a very detailed manner what exactly is this money bill. Now, money bill is a type of legislation like any other bill which is introduced in the Parliament and then presented it to the President for her assent. So in a similar way, money bill is just a type of legislation, and this money bill relates to the appropriation of money from the Consolidated Fund of India. Right, so all the revenues of the government of India are deposited into the Consolidated Fund of India. So if government wanted to withdraw money out of the Consolidated Fund of India, parliamentary approval is necessary. So therefore, any legislation so which wanted to withdraw money from the consolidated fund of India, then that bill can be considered as a money bill. And in fact, money bills are typically dealt with financial matters such as taxation, public expenditure, and public debt. So all these matters are essentially comes under the money bill. So what is the criteria that a bill should fulfill to become a money bill, right? So there's a proper criteria, and this criteria has to be followed to designate any bill as a money bill. Now what is that procedure? So according to the Constitution of India, so a bill is considered as a money bill so if it contains only provisions dealing with all or any of the following matters, and this is what enumerated in Article 110 Clause 1 of the Constitution. Right? So all these matters are enumerated in Article 110 Clause 1 of the Indian Constitution. So therefore, if any bill is considered as a money bill, so if it contains only provisions dealing with all or any of the following matters. Now what are those matters which are enumerated in Article 110 Clause 1 of the Indian Constitution? The imposition, abolition, remission and alteration of regulation of any tax. So all these matters. So remember that this was asked by UPSC in the year 2018 prelims examination, right? So therefore it is very important. So any bill which deals with the imposition, abolition, remission and alteration or even regulation of any tax, that bill can be considered as a money bill. And even any bill that deals with the regulation of the borrowing of government or giving any guarantees by the government of India, then that bill can also be considered as a money bill. So third, the custody of the consolidated fund or contingency fund of India, two important funds at the central level, and the payment of money or withdrawal of money from such fund, that bill can also be considered as a money bill. And the appropriation of money out of the consolidated fund of India, then also it will be considered as a money bill. And apart from that, declaring of any expenditure to be expenditure charged on the consolidated fund of India and increasing the amount of any such expenditure, then also it can be considered as a money bill. A receipt of money on account of such consolidated fund of India or the public account of India or the custody. So all these matters comes under the ambit of money bill. So any bill which has been dealing with all or any of these provisions which are mentioned in Article 110 of the Indian Constitution, so those bills are categorized as money bills. So those bills are known as money bills. Now what is the procedure for the passage of money bills, right? So there's a different procedure, and this procedure is also very, very important, right? For example, for constitutional amendment bills, there is a different procedure. For ordinary bills, there's a different procedure in the parliament. And in a similar way, for money bills, there is also a different and unique procedure that is being adopted in the Indian parliament. So what is that procedure? The procedure is that money bills can only be introduced in the Lok Sabha. So in the beginning, I have already told you that Lok Sabha has more powers than the Rajya Sabha when it comes to matters dealing with the money bill. So therefore, money bills can only be introduced in the Lok Sabha, and it can be introduced in the Lok Sabha only with the prior permission of the president or prior recommendation of the president. Only then the money bills can be introduced in the Lok Sabha. And in fact, money bills can be considered as government bills, and they can only be introduced by a minister. So since these money bills are introduced by the government or they are introduced by a minister, so if this money bill failed to get the approval of the Lok Sabha, or if it is not passed in the Lok Sabha, it amounts to the dissolution of the government. The Council of Ministers must resign if this money bill is not passed in the Lok Sabha, right? So it is being introduced only in the Lok Sabha. So after the money bill is passed by the Lok Sabha, it is then transmitted to the Rajya Sabha. Okay, so first it will be introduced in only in Lok Sabha, and after introducing it in Lok Sabha, and then it will be transmitted into the Rajya Sabha for the consideration of Rajya Sabha. Now understand, Rajya Sabha has limited powers with respect to the money bill. Right, so what sort of a limited powers Rajya Sabha has with respect to money bills? So we will understand that. Because Rajya Sabha can only make recommendations and it cannot reject the bill, and it also cannot amend the bill which is transmitted by the Lok Sabha to the Rajya Sabha. Right, so understand one thing, that Rajya Sabha has a limited powers with respect to the money bills. So any money bill which is transmitted to the Rajya Sabha by the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha can only make recommendations on that particular money bill, and it cannot reject it, and it also cannot amend the bill. And apart from that, Rajya Sabha must return the bill to the Lok Sabha within a period of 14 years, either with recommendations or without recommendations, right? So when any bill is passed in Lok Sabha and it is transmitted into the Rajya Sabha, so for its consideration, Rajya Sabha must return the bill with or without recommendations to the Lok Sabha within 14 days. Right? So if Rajya Sabha did not, or if Rajya Sabha does not return the bill within the 14 days, then the bill deemed to be passed by the Rajya Sabha. Right, so it generally considers that the bill is deemed to be passed by the Rajya Sabha if it does not return the bill within the period of 14 days. So therefore, once the bill is again sent to the Lok Sabha by the Rajya Sabha, either with or without recommendations. Imagine that Rajya Sabha has made certain recommendations to one particular bill, money bill. The Lok Sabha can either accept those recommendations or reject the recommendations altogether made by the Rajya Sabha to that particular money bill. So if Lok Sabha accept any recommendations made by the Rajya Sabha, so the bill would be deemed to have been passed by both houses in that modified form. Even if Lok Sabha don't accept any of those recommendations made by the Rajya Sabha, then also the bill would be deemed to have been passed by the both houses of the parliament. Right, so if Lok Sabha does not accept any of those recommendations, the bill deemed to have been passed by both houses in the form of originally passed by the Lok Sabha without any changes. However, so if Rajya Sabha does not return the bill to the Lok Sabha within 14 days, as I have already explained, so if Rajya Sabha don't return the bill within the 14 days, now what happens if Rajya Sabha don't return the bill within the 14 days? Then also the bill deemed to have been passed by the, it generally considers that the bill would have been passed by the Rajya Sabha. It generally considers the bill deemed to have been passed by the both houses of the parliament in the form originally passed by the Lok Sabha if Rajya Sabha not passed the bill within the 14 days. Remember, Rajya Sabha cannot amend the money bill and Rajya Sabha cannot reject the money bill also. So if money bill is pending in Rajya Sabha for more than 14 days, then also it generally consider that the money bill is deemed to have been passed by the both houses of the parliament. If the date if the time of pending of a money bill in the Rajya Sabha is more than 14 days. And in fact, all these the procedure of passing a money bill in the parliament indicating that Lok Sabha has more powers than the Rajya Sabha with regard to these money bills. So it is true that Lok Sabha has more powers than the Rajya Sabha with respect to these money bills. Now when a money bill is presented to the president, he may give his assent or withhold his assent, because president also have number of options. For example, when we talk about the ordinary bills, so president can use a number of veto options, right? So suspensive veto, absolute veto, pocket veto, number of vetoes. So either a president can withhold his assent to the bill, either he give his assent to the bill, right? So even send the bill for the reconsideration, send bill for reconsideration of the parliament, right? So there are number of options before the president when any bill is passed by both houses of the parliament, and then those bills will be sent to the president for her assent. But remember, when we talk about the money bills, money bill is introduced only in Lok Sabha with the previous recommendation of the president, right? So it was introduced in the Lok Sabha with the previous recommendation of the president, and because of that reason, president should not send the money bill for the reconsideration of the both houses of the parliament. President shall not send the bill for the reconsideration of the both houses of the parliament. Either he can withhold the bill or either he can give the assent to the bill, but he cannot return the bill for the reconsideration of the parliament. With respect to money bills, president generally gives her assent to these bills because money bills are generally introduced in the Lok Sabha with the previous permission or with the recommendation of Rajya Sabha, recommendation of the president, right? So with the previous permission of the president, money bills are introduced in the Lok Sabha, and because of that reason, generally president gives her assent to the money bills. Right? So since what has been happening is that when any bill which is passed through this money bill route, so since Rajya Sabha has a limited powers, with respect to the money bills, governments have been increasingly choosing this money bill route. Even ordinary bills, even bills which are not dealing with the matters that are enumerated in Article 110, those bills are also passed as money bills to evade the scrutiny by the Rajya Sabha, to bypass Rajya Sabha scrutiny. Right? So this is particularly violation of Article 110 of the Indian Constitution, and that's why, because understand that it is also degrading the parliamentary sovereignty in India, further lead to the decline of parliament in India. So therefore, opposition parties have been claiming that it is a clear violation of Article 110 of the Indian Constitution, and that's why the petition was filed in the Supreme Court with respect to the violation of Article 110 of the Indian Constitution, and government increasingly using this money bill route to even pass ordinary laws through the money bill route so that to evade the scrutiny by the Rajya Sabha, since Rajya Sabha has limited powers. But on the other hand, in the parliament, Rajya Sabha is an integral part. Remember, with respect to the amendment of the constitution, parliament has equal powers with respect to the Rajya Sabha. So therefore, this petition was filed in the Supreme Court. So I hope it is clear. And next important article is with respect to India-Nepal ties, right? So there was a detailed editorial with respect to the India-Nepal. Now, when we talk about Nepal, so we have been enjoying historical ties with Nepal, right? So spanning, these ties have, spanning from centuries. We have been enjoying the historical ties with Nepal from centuries. Now, when we talk about the context of India-Nepal ties, so the author has been actually believing that this is the right opportunity to upgrade India's ties with the Nepal. In recent times, we can see there is a clear shift in the Nepal and its top leadership. They are more inclined towards China, and China also investing heavily in Nepal. However, Chinese presence in Nepal would be a strategic security concern for India. So therefore, it is very, very important that we need to step up or upgrade our relations with Nepal, and that is very important. And the author has been pointing out that this is the right opportunity to upgrade India-Nepal relations as Prime Minister Narendra Modi became Prime Minister for the third time, and even in Nepal a similar development took place. So that was KP Oli became the Prime Minister of Nepal. So therefore the author has been suggesting that this is the right time that we too further strengthen our relations. Whatever differences we have, so those differences must be sorted out for the benefit of the people and for the benefit of both the countries. That is what the author has been discussing, author has been arguing here. However, in order to further upgrade the relations between India and Nepal, there are a number of historical challenges, and even there are a lot of turbulence in recent time between these two countries. So when we talk about the challenges, so the bilateral relations between India and Nepal were not good or not that optimistic from 2015 onwards, right? So what happened in Nepal was, after 2015 Nepal passed a constitution. However, the constitution was opposed by India because it has been alienating the rights of Madheshi community in the southern Nepal, right? So that has created a constitutional controversy, and in fact, so there was also a kind of a discontent that was developed among the people of Nepal that India has been interfering very often in their internal affairs, right? So the bilateral relations between these two countries have deteriorated in recent times, especially after 2015, due to India's constant opposition to Nepal's new constitution and even the subsequent economic blockade. So all these factors have created a kind of a discontent and resentment against India in the minds of the people. Now goodwill is very important. Goodwill and soft power is very, very important, right? So we need to leverage this soft power. However, certainly after 2015, India's opposition to the constitution and the Madheshi led economic blockade of Nepal certainly impacted the goodwill and soft power of India in Nepal, and that has further led to Nepal leaning more towards China after that. And even in recent time, there are also controversial statements which were made by the former Prime Minister of Nepal, KP Sharma Oli, including claims over Ayodhya's location and India's assertive stance, so further strained relations between both these countries. Apart from that, there are also a lot of territorial disputes that arised following India's updated political map in the year 2019. So India updated its political map, and that has led to Nepal also amending its constitution to include Limpiadura and Kalapani triangle. Now when we talk about Limpiadura and Kalapani triangle, so they are located somewhere here in the Uttarakhand Nepal border, right? So this border dispute has also been going on between India and Nepal over Kalapani and Limpiadura regions in the Uttarakhand. So all these factors are the challenges between India and Nepal. So however, in Nepal, there are also concerns with respect to India's involvement and India's Hindutva influence in Nepal. For example, so Nepali people believe that there's an increased Indian involvement in Nepal's government, Nepal's politics, and even the covert activities sponsored by India have increased in Nepal. So that has also led to the promotion of Hindutva ideology sponsored by some of Indian based groups or organizations in Nepal. So all these factors have created a kind of a negative sentiment in the minds of the people of Nepal. So that is the one of the biggest concern, because see, so when we are talking about the neighborhood first policy, or when we are talking about India would always act as an elder brother, not a big brother, right? So there's a lot of difference between being an elder brother and being a big brother. Now big brother actually shows the assertive stance over all the small neighboring countries. However, India always portrays itself as an elder brother to all its neighboring countries, whether it is Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, all these countries. So since we are an elder brother, so we should also follow the principles like mutual respect, mutual respect, respect to sovereignty and territorial integrity, respect to sovereignty and territorial integrity. So all these things are very very important. And apart from that, when we talk about the Gujarat as a foreign minister's Gujarat doctrine was devised. Now this Gujarat doctrine essentially emphasizes on non-reciprocity towards our neighbors. So therefore all these things have to be guided in India's current neighborhood first policy, right? So we have neighborhood first policy, and neighborhood first policy should essentially deal with these things. Only then we would gradually or significantly upgrade our relations with all our neighboring countries. So ideological reshaping, particularly RSS and BJP. So there are also concerns with respect to the ideological reshaping that has been taking place in Nepal, and even there are a lot of future concerns with respect to Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, about Modi's third term and its implications on the bilateral relations over a period of time. So what are the opportunities for resetting the relations between these two countries? How can we reset the relations between these two countries? And that has to be discussed. So first and foremost, we need to talk about India's neighborhood first policy. So we have devised this neighborhood first policy, so where we would have a non-reciprocal policy with respect to our neighbors. So therefore we need to recalibrate our neighborhood first policy, and we need to give an utmost priority to our neighbors, and we should also follow the policies such as respect to sovereignty and territorial integrity, mutual respect, and non-interference in the each other's internal affairs. And that is very very important here, right? So a non-interference approach with respect to Nepal is a significant step forward that the author has been arguing for, right? So importance of adopting this non-interference approach to promote the political stability and also economic growth in Nepal. And similarly, economic recognition. So recognition of Nepal's economic significance, particularly for India. And in fact, Nepal is the 7th largest remittance sending country to India. So therefore, all these things have to be remembered by India, or recognized and identified by India. So to make sure that we significantly enhance our ties with Nepal. So that is very very important. So mutual cooperation is very very important here. So whatever differences we have with Nepal, so those differences have to be settled bilaterally. And apart from that, India also have concerns with increasing Chinese presence in Nepal and increasing investments in infrastructure projects in Nepal, because a kind of instability in Nepal would certainly impact India's security, right? So it is a concern for India's security, and because of that reason, Nepal should be ready to give certain assurances to India with respect to Chinese increasing involvement, increasing presence in the Nepal. And apart from that, we should not forget that Nepal should recognize the importance of India, right? So it should recognize the importance of India, because remember that Nepal is a landlocked country. So it is a landlocked country and it does not have access to port. Either it gets its essentials from China or from India. So therefore, in this context, Nepal's active engagement with India is very very important, particularly in the context of the cultural relations that dates back to centuries between these two countries. Okay, so that's all about India Nepal ties. And next important article is with respect to the increasing heat wave like conditions and how heat wave would impact women. So that is what we need to understand, right? So we all knew that climate change has been increasing the heat wave, across the world. So climate change has been creating heat wave like conditions, and the frequency and the intensity of heat waves substantially increasing in recent times, and that can be because of the climate change, right? So in fact, India experienced one of the worst heat waves in the year 2023 and even 2024 also. So in these years, India experienced worst heat wave like conditions. So if we go into the context, so how these heat waves are actually impacting the women, the warmest year on record was 2023. So in fact, temperatures in several parts of India during May-June 2024 are reported to be record breaking, because there are highest temperatures recorded in 2023 and even 2024 also during May to June period. So higher temperatures or increasing temperatures have a disproportionately higher impact on the woman, right? So extreme heat wave conditions have a higher impact on women compared to men. It is because of the unequal power dynamics between the genders, and that very often biased against women, and gender norms, unequal access to the resources between these two genders, as reflected in the global gender gap index. So that places India at the 18th rank from the bottom. So if you look at the global gender gap report, so this global gender gap report places India at the 18th rank from the least. So that is substantially a concern. So India is home to more than 1/6. So now for example, if you look at the total women in the world, so 1 in 6 women actually lives in India. So you can imagine that a huge population of women actually lives in India. So therefore, extreme heat would substantially or disproportionately have a higher impact on women, especially in India, because poverty levels are very high, and majority of the women in India are not self-reliant or economically independent, and their workforce engagement is also very, very less, and majority of the women also engaged in unpaid care services or unpaid work, right? So when we talk about the impact of heat wave on the urban female, now in urban areas, many of the women have engaged in the informal sector as informal or unorganized laborers. For example, construction is one area where majority of the women are being engaged as informal laborers. However, those laborers, particularly women laborers, would face the harsh weather and weather working in marketplaces, streets, construction sites, landfills, and even as employers at home, right? So in fact, they are very often paid lesser wages compared to their male counterparts. So they are being paid lesser wages, and because of increasing heat wave, the productivity would also declines over a period of time. And due to their occupational settings, these casual wage workers such as street vendors and paid domestic helpers, construction workers, and sanitation workers, so they are without a doubt vulnerable to the climate extremes, particularly heat wave like conditions. They are extremely vulnerable. And apart from that, the heat wave like conditions, which are being coupled with water scarcity and power fluctuations, they raise challenges of being hydrated and staying comfortable, right? So water scarcity being the heat wave conditions being coupled with water scarcity and power fluctuation, they also causes a number of other challenges that working women, especially in these informal sectors, would very often face challenges of being hydrated and staying comfortable even after they are attending the informal work. However, if you look at the urban areas, the green cover in those urban areas has also been declining at a substantial pace. So therefore, if you have a green cover in urban areas, so they generally provide a cooling cover in those urban areas, so they actually keep the climate cool. But there is no green cover in urban areas, coupled with so increasing intensity and frequency of these heat waves and urban heat island effect. So all these things have been further building on and increasing the intensity of the heat wave conditions and its impact on the women who are working in the informal sector in dense urban areas. So that is a very a serious problem which has been impacting the women and their health productivity over a period of time. However, so we need to understand the impact of heat waves on rural women. So how heat waves would impact rural women? So rural women very often using biomass over a hot stove. So for example, under Ujjwala Yojana scheme, the government has distributed LPG cylinders or LPG connections free of cost were given to all below poverty line women. So despite such measures, majority of the rural women, especially rural poor women, they are much more preferred to use this biomass stoves. Okay, so they are preferring biomass stoves over the LPG cylinders. So they have been bearing the brunt of ensuring the disease burden, or it has also been increasing a number of health related problems that women have been facing. Because so according to the National Family Health Survey 5, 56.8% of the rural Indian families cook on the biomass instead of LPG cylinders, and that is associated with the the pollution, air pollution, and also several health problems for the women over a period of time. And the other thing is that in rural areas, majority of the workers in the agriculture sector are women, and majority of the beneficiaries of the Manrega program are women. So they have to work outdoors for a longer periods of time. So of course they would be exposed to the extreme heat wave like conditions, and that is also another problematic area. And if any woman exposed to the extreme heat wave like conditions, so their health would also gets impacted, and that also create a new challenges and new problems for the woman. So apart from that, a prolonged exposure to the extreme heat wave like conditions adversely impact rural women, because heat may decide whether they live in hunger or poverty or not. For example, imagine that there is an extreme heat and women cannot go out and they cannot work. So if they cannot work, so how can we expect that woman to be financially independent, women to be self-reliant? So therefore, it is without a doubt, if there is extreme heat wave like conditions outside, women generally don't prefer to go out and work. Even if they go out to work, so their health would get impacted and the productivity would reduced, and they would also get a lower wages, and they cannot go to work for a longer periods of time. So that is the problem. So therefore, heat stress over a period of time puts the body under the great deal of strain. And because of that reason, it would be very harder and very difficult for the majority of the women in rural areas to do outdoor work such as agriculture and engaging in the Manrega related works which create community resources because of the higher temperatures. And in fact, it would also, if women go out and they start working in this extreme heat wave like conditions, so it would lead to several illnesses including heat cramps, heat stroke, and even the hyperthermia related problems as well. So therefore, when we compare men and women and their vulnerability to the heat wave like condition, no doubt both are vulnerable to the heat wave. But when we compare men and women and their vulnerability to heat wave, women are at a greater risk because of their physiological makeup. And heat stress would also have a serious impact on maternal and child health of women, right? So there's a data on heat strains effects translating to a rise in preterm delivery or early delivery, miscarriages within the pregnancy, and even stillbirths. So all these problems have been because of the extreme heat wave or women's exposure to the heat wave like conditions, and that has also been substantially increasing the maternal mortality and infant mortality rates. In fact, through the sustainable development goals, we have the objectives of reducing both maternal mortality rates and infant mortality rates. But women's exposure to the extreme heat wave like conditions has been further deteriorating this scenario. Okay. Yeah. So what should be the way forward in this context? So when we talk about the way forward, so we need to strengthen their resilience to heat strain, and that is the need of the hour, right? So like for example, when we talk about the climate change, we very often discuss that for climate, in order to deal with the negative impact of climate change, we need to create resilient infrastructure. In a similar way, so we need to strengthen the resilience of women to the heat stress. So how can we do that? So we can do that by creating a climate friendly urban infrastructure, urban planning, urban development, and even access to sustainable cooling technologies. For example, in India, we have district cooling action plan. So such methods have to be devised to substantially increase resilience of women to the negative impacts of extreme heat wave. Right, so fair division of care work is also very important within a family between men and women, and public provisioning of essential services should be our immediate concerns, and these concerns have to be looked into. However, we cannot talk about the adaptation and resilience as they are very important when we are dealing with the impacts of the climate change. So without actually addressing the social power gradient, that is particularly with respect to the stereotyping, the stigma, and the inequalities within the gender, male and female, so that thing has to be addressed. So right, so that actually determines women's capacity to face the crisis that the women have been experiencing as of now because of the heat wave like conditions. So next article is with respect to the Indian Council of Agriculture Research to release 323 new varieties of 56 different crops. Right, so we all knew that ICAR is the Indian Council of Agriculture Research. It is a premier research institute under Ministry of Agriculture, so that actually engage in producing the high quality seeds, right? So seeds which increases the productivity, which could withstand extreme heat conditions. They can tolerate to higher salinity conditions, and they can also develop the short season varieties. So different types of crops or different varieties of crops are actually released by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research every year. So Indian Council of Agriculture Research has essentially launched one important program. So that was One Scientist, One Product program, like one district, one product program. So Indian Council of Agriculture Research also launched One Scientist and One Product program on Tuesday to improve research in the field of agriculture and animal husbandry. So this is the objective. So the objective of One Scientist and One Product program is essentially to improve research in the field of agriculture and animal husbandry. Right. So the Indian Council of Agriculture Research is going to release 323 varieties of 56 different crops, and these crops include cereals, oil seeds, forage crops, sugarcane, and they are being introduced in its 96th Foundation Day. Right. So when we talk about all these different varieties and different crops, These crops also include 289 climate resilient varieties and 27 biofortified varieties. Now, when we talk about the climate resilient varieties, what are these climate resilient varieties particularly? So varieties like drought tolerant varieties and flood resistant varieties and even salinity tolerant varieties. So all these different varieties and different crops can be considered as the climate resilient varieties. Now, what is the biofortified variety? So biofortified variety actually means that it comes very close to the fortification of food. Fortification of food is essentially adding essential minerals and nutrients to the food crops. Right, so under fortification, essential minerals and nutrients will be added to the food. So therefore the mineral plus nutrient requirement can be fulfilled. So thereby, so we can deal with we can fight effectively against malnutrition, the problem of malnutrition in India. So malnutrition is one of the big problem, and that is very often leading to the hidden hunger. Even though we have been supplying food grains to the majority of below poverty line people, but food is lacking essential nutrients. That has been leading to the malnutrition or hidden hunger. So this problem of lack of nutrients in the food can be fulfilled by the biofortification of these different crop varieties. So these minerals and nutrients will be added, or new varieties will be produced, and those new varieties will have essential minerals and nutrients that are sufficient to meet the requirements. So apart from that, the Indian Council of Agriculture Research would also prioritizes seed hubs for high yielding variety oilseeds and pulses varieties to achieve the self-reliance in the field of oilseeds and pulses. Remember that there is a huge demand for both oilseeds and pulses varieties or pulses, but we have been importing these oilseeds and pulses from other countries. And apart from that, the Indian Council of Agriculture Research was also working to develop 100 new seed varieties and 100 farm technologies in 100 days as part of Centre's 100-day action plan. So with the help of breeder seed, about 16 million hectares are under the biofortified varieties. As I have already explained, what are these biofortified varieties? Around 16 million hectares of land is under the biofortified varieties, and that would expected to meet the nutrition requirements of India's population. And in fact, so out of 16 million hectares, there were different crops, especially the biofortified varieties. They include wheat, rice, pearl millet, lentil, mustard, and other crops in the period 23-24. And in fact, so deployment of climate resilient technologies actually led to the enhanced production even during the abnormal years where there is a recurrent rainfall like events, drought like conditions, and floods in some parts of the country. And from 2014, 2015 to 2023-24, a total of 2,593 high yielding variety seeds were produced by Indian Council of Agriculture Research. And out of 2,593 seeds, 2,177 are climate resilient varieties with both biotic and abiotic stress resistance, and 150 of these varieties are biofortified crop varieties. Now remember, when Indian Council of Agriculture Research engaged in such research, when it produces both climate resilient crops and biofortified crops, so we could deal with the climate change and its negative impacts on the agriculture sector, and alternatively we can enhance productivity of food grains, and that also ensures food security, and we can also explore the opportunities of export potential of food grains in other parts of the world. So therefore, overall, Indian Council of Agriculture Research would make agriculture more and more profitable, and that would also help in achieving the goal of doubling farmers' income and making agriculture profitable. Okay, so making agriculture more and more profitable. So about Indian Council of Agriculture Research, so it was an autonomous body, so that is responsible for coordinating agriculture education and research in India. So it actually reports to the Department of Agriculture, Research and Education under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Union Agriculture, and in fact it's all Union Minister of Agriculture actually serves as its president, and in fact it is one of the largest network of agriculture research education institutes in the world. So apart from that, so what is the work of Indian Council of Agriculture Research? So it actually plan, undertake, aid, promote, coordinate. So we can say that research and development of new high yield variety seeds, both climate resilient varieties and bio fortified varieties, and engaging with the stakeholders, involving the farmers, and further enhancing the existing varieties of seeds. And it would also engage in research with important applications in agriculture, agroforestry, animal husbandry, fisheries, home science and allied science. So this is the work that Indian Council of Agriculture Research actually do. So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So if you like our work, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.